All right, let's get right into it. We're going to dive into a story of modern naval power, but it's a story where the real action isn't about the size of the ship, it's about the length of its supply line. We're going to see how the world's biggest navy might just be tied down by something way less glamorous than missiles and jets: logistics. To really get a handle on the future of naval warfare, you gotta look back. And this quote from World War II, it really sets the stage because it spells out a brutal, simple truth. A navy, no matter how powerful, is only as strong as its supply chain. I mean, you can have the scariest ships in the world, but if you run out of gas, food, and ammo, well, you've just got a bunch of really expensive targets waiting at the bottom of the ocean. And 56%, that number right there, proves the point. In the Pacific War, American submarines sank over half of Japan's entire merchant fleet. See, they didn't just go after battleships. No, they played the long game. They went after the oil tankers, the cargo ships. They basically put a chokehold on Japan's entire war effort and just squeezed. It all comes back to that old saying, right? Amateurs talk tactics, but professionals talk logistics. That silent war fought by submarines under the waves, it was an absolute masterclass in winning the war of logistics. So, why are we talking about all this history? Because that exact same lesson is playing out right now. There's a new naval power on the block, China's People's Liberation Army Navy, or the PLAN, and they are building world-class warships at a speed that is frankly mind-boggling. And look, China isn't just building a navy to hang out by its own coast. Nope. The dream here is to become a true blue water navy. That means being able to sail anywhere in the world and project power, from the Pacific all the way to the Indian Ocean and beyond. And the crown jewel of this whole ambition, it's their newest aircraft carrier, the Fujian. And let me tell you, this thing is a beast. It's a full-on supercarrier just as big as America's best. It's even got those fancy new electromagnetic catapults. The hardware, no doubt about it, is seriously impressive. But that's where we get to the big question, the real meat of this whole thing. It's great to build a shiny new ship, but can you keep it fighting when it's an ocean away from home? So let's ask it point blank. Could a Chinese carrier strike group actually survive a real fight out in the middle of the Pacific? So to figure that out, we're going to look at what really matters, the soft factors. We'll kick off with the tyranny of distance, then look at what it means to be an ocean away from home, why this dragon might be on a leash, and finally, what happens when the countdown begins. Let's start with the most basic thing a ship needs when it's far from home: fuel. Because really, that's what the tyranny of distance is all about. It's about how much gas you have in the tank. And this is where we see a huge fundamental difference. Every single one of the U.S. Navy's supercarriers, they're nuclear powered. That means they can sail for something like 20 years without refueling. It's almost unlimited range. But China's carriers, even the brand spanking new Fujian, they all run on good old-fashioned fossil fuels. They drink the stuff. And that creates this fossil fuel tether. It's like an umbilical cord made of oil. A Chinese carrier can't just go off on its own. It has to drag this whole parade of slow, fat, juicy targets, the oil tankers, along with it. And in a war, those tankers are basically sitting ducks for any enemy submarine. Sound familiar? It's the exact same playbook from World War II. But this tether, it's not just about fuel, right? What happens if you get hit? Or what if you just run out of missiles? Where do you go when you're thousands of miles from the nearest friendly port? Well, the answer really boils down to having friends in the right places. For the United States, that means having access to around 71 different bases and friendly ports all across the Indo-Pacific. And China? They've got 2. A support base in Djibouti, way over in Africa, and some access in Cambodia. And even those have pretty limited capabilities. I mean, the difference is just staggering. The U.S. has this global web, a safety net of places to fix up, rearm, and hide out. But a Chinese carrier that gets hit out in the Pacific, it has to limp all the way home. And that's if it can. Some experts talk about a glass jaw problem. The U.S. Navy learned how to handle massive damage the hard way through decades of painful experience. The fear is that the plan just doesn't have that muscle memory yet. So a single hit, with nowhere to go for repairs, that could be game over. So if these carriers have a limited leash because of fuel, and they don't have anywhere to get fixed up, then what are they for? How is China actually planning to use them? Well, the answer is a strategy with a fancy name: anti-access/area denial. Just call it A2/AD. The simplest way to think about it is like a giant keep-out zone, or a defensive bubble, that China projects from its coastline using long-range missiles. And here's the key. The Chinese carriers aren't meant to be globe-trotting adventurers like U.S. carriers. Instead, they're more like mobile airfields that operate under the protection of this giant missile umbrella. They just push that defensive bubble out a little further. But if they wander too far outside of it, they're suddenly very, very vulnerable. You can see this difference in velocity in the numbers, too. Take a look at this sortie rate. That's how many flights they can launch in a day. Now, the PLAN is getting better, for sure. Their carrier, the Shandong, hit a record of around 63 flights a day. Not bad. But a U.S. carrier, when it's going all out, it can do up to 240. That's a massive difference in combat power. It's the difference between just defending yourself and truly dominating the airspace. Okay, so let's bring it all together. What does this all mean for our hypothetical Chinese carrier group out there in the middle of the Pacific, in a fight, a long, long way from home? It means that the second it sails out from under that protective missile umbrella, a clock starts ticking. First, it's the jet fuel. You start running low, you can't launch as many planes, and your combat power just plummets. Then, it's the fuel for the carrier itself. Now, you have to slow down, you can't maneuver. You basically become a giant, slow-moving target. The entire mission just turns into a desperate race against the fuel gauge. So here's the bottom line. It's all about hardware versus software. China has absolutely nailed the hardware part. They can build incredible, world-class ships, no question. But they haven't built the software to run a global navy. And that software isn't code. It's the global network of bases, it's the massive fleet of supply ships, and maybe most important of all, it's the decades of experience that you just can't buy. Which leaves us with one final big question. China has built a world-class fleet, for sure. But can it build a world-spanning navy? That's the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? And it's a powerful reminder that true naval power isn't just about how much steel you can put in the water. It's about how long you can keep it there.